Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. 2 people have died and thousands of residents have been forced to flee their homes as wildfires blaze through California. Rescuers continue their search for survivors in China following the aftermath of the Tibet earthquake. British special forces are accused of getting away with murder as an inquiry into their conduct in Afghanistan is released. And a body is discovered in the Italian Dolomites during a hunt for 2 missing hikers. To our top story, and over 30,000 people have had to flee their homes around the city of Los Angeles as raging wildfires send buildings and vegetation up in flames. More than 200,000 homes and businesses are without power in the area, and California Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency. Caroline Malone has this report.
Firefighters are working tirelessly to try and put out 3 major fires that have burned out of control in North Los Angeles, but so far have not been able to contain them. The area of Pacific Palisades is particularly badly hit. Thousands of people rushed out of their homes as the flames set in. At least one woman, though, rushed in to try and put out the flames at her parents' home.
They're 90 years old. They've lived in this house for 75 years, and they've had the same insurance, and these insurance people decided to cancel their fire. And we're going through this, and it just happened, and they have no fire insurance.
Down the road, staff at an assisted living centre for the elderly barely got people out in time.
Basically, the fire started coming from down the mountain. We noticed it moving pretty quickly, so we did start evacuating everybody. I was running up to the 3rd story, 2nd story, carrying people down, just picking them up, because we do have a lot of wheelchair people in here. So we were able to get everybody out of here at a timely manner before the building actually went into flames.
Officials have warned that things are only likely to get worse as major wind gusts fan the flames across a wider area. 3,000 acres have already burned up between Santa Monica and Malibu. President Biden had to cancel a planned trip in the area as flames grounded Air Force One. He says a federal grant has been approved to help reimburse the state of California for its major fire response. Caroline Malone, Al Arabiya News, Washington.
In the last hour, the Los Angeles Fire Department confirmed 2 people have died. Here's what County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney had to say during a press conference.
The Palisades fire is located in both LA City and LA County. We have well over 5,000 acres that have burned, and the fire is growing. We have no percentage of containment. We have an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed, and also no reported fatalities, and a high number of significant injuries to residents who did not evacuate, in addition to first responders who are on the fire line. For the Eaton fire, we have over 2,000 acres burning at this time, and the fire continues to grow with 0% containment. We have over 500 personnel assigned, and unfortunately, we have 2 reported fatalities to civilians. Unknown cause at this time, and we do have a number of significant injuries.
We can now speak to LA residents Orly Israel and eyewitness Tanner Choles, who are live from Santa Monica in California for us this evening. Thank you so much to both of you for joining the show. Orly and Tanner, you both had to run out of the house to escape the fire. Tell us about that, and are you both now safe?
Yeah, currently we are in Santa Monica at a friend's house. It was a very eerie sight. We were both pretty calm and just like trying to do our best with what was given to us at the time. Originally, we went up to scope out the fire along Toluca Canyon. And so as the fire crept closer, Orly's house was just down the road. And so as the flames were getting closer, I was like, hey man, we're gonna go and we should take care of your house. And so we went down there and started fireproofing the house as much as we could. So like, dousing it with water, getting anything flammable off of the deck and the backyard and that kind of thing. But eventually the flames it was just too much and we had to leave.
Yeah.
Orly, it was your house that you had to try and fireproof there, as Tanner just said. Do you know what condition it is in, or have you heard anything at all?
It wasn't in great condition when we left, and I have only heard from some people that left after us that the whole street was just on fire. Every tree was exploded when we'd left. And I'm optimistic, but, the house isn't burned down until I hear it's burned down.
Well, you must be so relieved to be alive and at safety now. How are your friends and neighbors doing?
Well, I think that I can either come out of this as the person whose house burned down, or come out of this as the person who discovered how resourceful and how connected this community was. I haven't had this much communication and connection with so many people that have reached out. I feel surrounded by love and support, and I'm sure that other people in the neighborhood feel the same way. And even though we may have lost every material thing we have gained or kept the realization that the people around us are here to support us, and we'll get through it.
Community positivity at a time like this is so important. Many people are saying that they've never seen wildfires like this. We know California is prone to this sort of thing. In your experience, have both of you ever experienced anything along these lines?
Yeah, I was talking to a local guy who lived here for like 50 years, and he said he's never seen anything quite like this. I do know from the National Weather Service here in the U.S., they're calling this the windstorm of the decade. And so these kind of winds of, gusts up to 70 to over 100 miles an hour. I don't know what it is in km, but it's quite significant for this area, even though we're used to like wildfires and that kind of thing. But something of this caliber has not been seen in years. And so I've never experienced anything close to this. And it's been jarring, to say the least. It's been insane to experience.
Over 30,000 people have been...
Like
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I've lived here all my life, haven't seen anything like this.
Well, I'm glad that you're both safe. Over 30,000 people have been evacuated from their homes as fire services attempt to tackle the blazes. What was the temperature and the atmosphere and the moment like for both of you? And what were authorities saying to you when the fire was becoming increasingly closer?
Well, we didn't see any authorities. We saw one fire truck as we were leaving, but it was mostly civilians with garden hoses fighting small fires. And we left because it was just too hot. Our faces are burned, my eyebrows, my eyes are still stinging because the fire was just, we stopped fighting the fire when we couldn't go near it because it was so hot and we couldn't reach it with the garden hose. And that was just time where we fought the battle.
Yeah, and I also felt like we were, some might think that it was a little bit foolish for us to even stay there that long, but I'm a storm chaser. I've been chasing for 16 years. I've been around different fires as well. And I just knew that with the way the winds were and everything, that we were in a good position up until we had to leave. We had plenty of escape routes going south down the ridge. But it was the sound of just homes literally being engulfed in flames, or just whole brush piles just igniting all at once, is something that I will never forget. It was insane.
Yeah.
I would just like to say thank you to both of you for joining us this evening and bringing us your story. I hope that you're both safe. LA residents Orly Israel and eyewitness Tanner Charles, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Now to China, and the search for survivors entered a second day today after a strong earthquake killed at least 126 people and damaged more than 3,000 buildings in a remote part of the Chinese region of Tibet near Everest. Another 188 people were injured after the earthquake hit the foothills of the Himalayas at around 9 a.m. local time on Tuesday, according to Chinese state media. Laura Westbrook has this report.
Chinese state media said the earthquake struck at 9:05 a.m. local time, with the epicenter located in Tingri. This is a rural county in a remote part of Tibet, near the Himalayan border with Nepal. Hours later, the death toll has started to rise, and we're getting a picture of the damage. Video on Chinese state media from the area showed hundreds of houses had collapsed and debris in the road, making it hard for people to get around. In photos published by state media, rescuers appeared to be digging through piles of rubble from toppled houses using ropes, shovels, and working by hand. Now, Tibet sits on the seismically active Himalayan region and is prone to earthquakes because of the collision of the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates. The closest city to the quake's epicenter was Tibet's second largest city of Shigatse, home to about 800,000 people, and it's also regarded as a holy site, as the seat of the Pancham Lama, the second highest spiritual leader in Tibetan Buddhism after the Dalai Lama. Now, hundreds of soldiers have been deployed, as well as fire and rescue workers, to search for people. But aftershocks, the remote location, and cold temperatures of up to minus 15 degrees Celsius are hampering those efforts. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for all-out efforts to rescue people. He's also ordered officials to minimize casualties and to resettle those whose homes were damaged. The Vice Premier, Zhang Guoqing, has also been dispatched to the area to guide the work. Tremors and aftershocks were felt in neighbouring India as well, and Nepal, where residents in the capital, Kathmandu, reportedly ran out of their homes Tuesday morning when they felt the quake, but there were no immediate reports of damage. Nepal has sent more than 2,500 police officers to assess damage and to look for victims. The epicenter was also around 75 kilometers north of Mount Everest. Local authorities have closed down a base camp. And winter is not a popular season for climbing the world's highest mountain, and many residents have migrated to lowland areas. But some tourists do visit the area. The Himalayan region is prone to powerful earthquakes. In 2015, a quake in Nepal with a magnitude of 7.8 killed nearly 9,000 people.
Laura Westbrook there, thank you for that report. Now, an inquiry looking into the behaviour and tactics of UK special forces in Afghanistan claims that SAS had a golden pass to get away with murder in the country during 2010 and 2013. Today, evidence from 7 witnesses was released as part of the independent inquiry ordered by the Ministry of Defence, which detailed concerns about alleged war crimes committed by British military in Afghanistan more than a decade ago. We can now go live to London to speak to our correspondent there, Olly Barratt. Olly, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Some shocking details have been revealed today. Can you give us some more about what we've heard and about the concerns that have been raised?
Yes, certainly some shocking claims that we have been reading in the evidence that has been released. Evidence from witnesses talking to the inquiry, from special forces units talking about colleagues of theirs in other special forces units. We heard that description of the so-called golden pass that some of the witnesses felt was given essentially to the SAS Special Forces unit with regards to operations carried out against Taliban suspects in Afghanistan during that period between 2010 and 2013. The claims are that there was effectively a culture of impunity that the SAS units felt had built up, and that oftentimes there would be Afghans murdered, in the words of some of the witnesses so far, in a way that would have potentially meant that war crimes were being committed. We've heard descriptions of so-called dropped weapons, which is when it is claimed SAS forces may have left weapons around the scenes close to people that had been killed to give the idea that they had been armed at the time, when perhaps in fact they had not been. Flat-packed is how one witness described hearing from another Special Forces personnel member when talking about some of those people killed in Special Forces operations. So certainly a series of shocking claims being laid out by a series of witnesses.
Olly, this all came to light after a TV documentary reported that soldiers from SAS had killed 54 people in so-called suspicious circumstances. The Ministry of Defence then ordered this inquiry. Has the inquiry found the TV documentary's claims to be true at all?
We haven't got to that point yet. At this point, what we're seeing is the release of evidence and submissions and testimony to the inquiry. The reason it's happening in this way, as you say, is because the identity of individuals who are giving evidence is not being released for reasons of national security. Several of them have talked about fearing for their own safety in coming up with these allegations. The hearings are being held in private, but the inquiry wants to be as transparent, it says, as possible. And so after the event, we are getting releases of some of the evidence that has been put forward. Now, it has to be said at this point that this is still claims being made by witnesses. This is still testimony being given to the inquiry. We haven't got yet to the stage of any of this being said to be valid or truthful, or any kind of conclusions being drawn by the inquiry. There is a long way to go until we get to that point.
Olly, in 60 seconds, if possible, is there any reason to believe that the Ministry of Defence will have to look at taking complaints and concerns more seriously in the future in light of this?
Well, certainly the added scrutiny of this inquiry may put that pressure on the Ministry of Defence. For now, the MOD is saying that it won't comment on an ongoing inquiry or indeed on Special Forces operations, and I suspect that will be the refrain until the inquiry concludes. But there have also been, off the back of this documentary and off the back of this inquiry, fresh allegations around Special Forces conduct in places like Syria and Libya as well. So perhaps that scrutiny, that added scrutiny, is already happening.
Olly, Barratt in London, thank you so much for joining us. Now let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. President-elect Donald Trump has repeated his takeover plans for Greenland and the Panama Canal. Trump believes they are both critical to American national security and wouldn't rule out using military or economic force to acquire them. Both Denmark and Panama have rejected any suggestion that they would give up territory. Now, Israeli strikes have killed at least 22 people in Gaza today, according to Palestinian medics. At least 10 were killed in the Sheikh Radwan area of Gaza City, whilst another 5 died in nearby Ziton suburb. It comes as the bodies of 2 Israeli hostages, a father and a son, are found in Gaza, according to Times of Israel. Italian journalist Cecilia Sala, who was detained in Iran last month, has been freed and has landed back safely in Rome, according to the Italian government. Sala was detained on the 19th of December and held in solitary confinement in Iran's Evin prison, 3 days after an Iranian engineer was arrested in Milan on a US warrant. The news was broken by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's officials, who said that Sala had been freed thanks to intense work on diplomatic and intelligence channels. An investigation into the Met Police handling of allegations against former Harrods boss Mohammed Al-Fayed has been launched today. It will look into any missed opportunities or failures by officers to properly investigate the reports made back in 2008. London's police force is currently reviewing 21 allegations made before Al-Fayed's death in 2003. And Taylor Swift is being credited with helping UK music sales reach a 20-year high in 2024. £2.4 billion was made last year, driven by streaming and a revival in vinyl. Swift's latest album, The Tortured Poets Department, was the best-selling album of the year, selling 783,000 copies. Her record-breaking worldwide Eras tour also contributed an estimated £1 billion to the UK economy. Let's go to Italy now, where a body has been discovered in the search for two British hikers who went missing in the Dolomites. Aziz Izzat and Samuel Harris from London were last heard from on the 1st of January and did not fly back to the UK as scheduled on the 6th of January. Italy's Alpine Rescue Service said a body was found, unfortunately lifeless, buried under the snow after a helicopter search on Wednesday morning. We can now catch up with our correspondent in Italy, Giles Gibson. Giles, good evening to you and thank you for joining us. What more do we know about the body that has been discovered earlier today?
Well, Italian authorities are telling us that they believe this body is that of Samuel Harris, the 35-year-old who was part of this two-man hiking team. They're saying this body was located at high altitude up in the Dolomite Mountains, in the area where they picked up the final phone signal from this two-man hiking group. In terms of the cause of death for this body, they're saying at this stage that they are still trying to work that out. It's still unclear, although they have put forward one theory that the cause of death could be due to a fall from a height. The word they used was from above. In terms of the next steps, well, clearly local authorities will be trying to make that identification of that body conclusive, final, and also in the meantime the search and rescue effort high up in the Dolomite Mountains is still very much ongoing.
Search and rescue teams have really struggled in the last few days because of weather conditions and because of light. Is the search now on to find the second hiker, and are conditions better?
Well, the local authorities have been using two different tactics really to try to sort of run this search and rescue operation. On the one hand, sort of scouring the area from above using helicopters, in particular trying to pick up any signals that might be coming from electronic devices in that area high up in the Dolomites Mountains. They've also deployed dog teams right up in these very hard to reach areas. These are teams that are very experienced in terms of working in areas where there have been avalanches. As you indicate, at some point on Wednesday, they were forced to stop the search due to deteriorating weather conditions. And of course, now darkness will have fallen over that part of northern Italy. So we're still waiting for the latest updates from the Italian authorities, but we believe that really the search and rescue operation is going to intensify once again in the early hours of Thursday morning local time, once the sun rises once again and they can just get a better picture of the area around them.
Giles, both these men have been described as experienced mountaineers, hikers. They go out fairly often. Has there been any reaction from their families at all?
We haven't had any reaction to the news of this first body being located by Italian authorities, but we have been told that family members of both men are on the ground in Italy and that also they're receiving psychological support during what just must be an unimaginably tough time for them. Just so many question marks around the fate of their loved ones. We've also had some comments from the girlfriend of Aziz Ziriat, the girlfriend named Rebecca Dimmock, saying, as you say, that they were experienced hikers. She talked about how they wanted to get out of nature during this holiday, or get out into nature during this holiday, that they'd planned to celebrate the new year, to bring in the new year by drinking red wine in one of the shelters high up in the Dolomite Mountains where they were staying. But clearly this end-of-year trip, this holiday, those celebratory sort of conditions appear to have taken a tragic turn.
Giles Gibson in Rome, thank you so much for that. Now let's take a look at the top business news. Luxury British car maker Rolls-Royce is expanding its Goodwood factory and global headquarters to meet the growing demand for bespoke models. It's planning to invest more than £300 million so it can build customised versions of its cars for the super-rich. Rolls-Royce sold 5,712 cars in 2024, down from its record the year before, but the total value of its sales was higher due to it selling more bespoke vehicles. Now, the Washington Post has announced it will lay off around 100 workers in an attempt to stem growing losses. According to reports, the job cuts will mainly affect employees on the business side of the US newspaper, which is owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. The layoffs come at a time of growing turmoil for the paper after Bezos broke with tradition and blocked an endorsement of Kamala Harris ahead of the US presidential election in November. Turning to sports news now, and UK Athletics and its former head of sport have been charged with manslaughter following the death of a Paralympian in 2017, according to the Crown Prosecution Service. The United Arab Emirates athlete Abdullah Hayayi died after a metal throwing cage fell on him while he was training for the shot put in London. The 36-year-old Paralympian was pronounced dead at the scene. West Ham have sacked their head coach Julian Lopetegui after 8 months in the job. The club, who are currently 14th in the Premier League, are expected to announce Graham Potter as his replacement. Andy Murray has started training Novak Djokovic at Melbourne Park ahead of the start of the Australian Open on Sunday. The Serbian split from his longtime coach Goran Ivanovic after he failed to win a major last year and hopes Murray can bring some new insights to his game. Djokovic has won an all-time record 24 Grand Slam titles. Winning the Australian Open will give him that unprecedented 25th, making him the greatest of all time. And France's World Cup winning manager Didier Deschamps is stepping down after next year's tournament in the US, Canada and Mexico. The 56-year-old has been in charge of the side since 2012, making him the country's longest-serving coach. He led the team to victory at the 2018 World Cup, as well as reaching the final of the 2022 tournament in Qatar and Euro 2016 on home soil. Now to a reminder of our top stories. 2 people have died and thousands of residents have been forced to flee their homes as wildfires blaze through California. Rescuers continue their search for survivors in China following the aftermath of the Tibet earthquake. British special forces are accused of getting away with murder as an inquiry into their conduct in Afghanistan is released. And a body is discovered in the Italian Dolomites during a hunt for 2 missing hikers. And that's all for us on W News. Thanks for joining us this evening. Riz Khan is coming up next, and don't miss Tom Burgess-Watson with GNT. Good night and thank you for joining us.